Hi there, it's Nicole for Honeybee Stamps, and today I'm going to share a scene card, building a scene with some of the new mermaid stamps from the Under the Sea release. And I am using stencils, stamps, and dies, as well as some sequins and confetti from the latest release for my card here today. This is often how I start out a card, by laying out my components. So in this case, some stencils. These are the sun rays here, and then I lay out my stamps or dies, whatever it might be, to get a good idea if the products I think I want to use are going to fit the design. I've got a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock here that's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. This is a standard A2 size. I've taped one of the layering sun rays here, and this is the one with the largest opening, and I'm inking squeezed lemonade distress ink through that. Then I'm going to grab the next one, because these are layering, and layer it on top. Now unfortunately, when I went to do this, I grabbed the smallest one instead of the medium sized one next. So I left it in because I'm going to show you how to fix it. Bristol smooth cardstock is super forgiving with distress inks. So I'm taking Wild Honey Distress ink and inking through this. And truly, if you didn't want to add the third layer of ink, you would not have to. This would be perfectly fine. But when I lift it up, you can see that there is a huge gap, or a much bigger gap than there would be if I had used the other one. So see, I realized right here, whoops, I forgot to use the medium one. So all I'm going to do is line that up, tape it down in place, and I'm going to ink over it. And it is going to disguise the fact, all of those nice little crisp lines from the stencil. Not even going to worry about it. Just going to ink right over that again with the Wild Honey Distress ink. That's looking much better. When I lift this up, you're going to see it's just a really subtle difference from the first layer to the second. Much better. Then I can go back with that third layer that I tried to use for the second layer. And for this, I'll use a little Rusty Hinge Distress ink to darken it up even more. And you can blend it out. I don't want to use very much of the Rusty Hinge. I want it to mostly be squeezed lemonade and wild honey. So there is my sun rays, which are gorgeous and so pretty. I'm going to go ahead and distress this further then by taking my lightest color, in this instance the squeezed lemonade, and I'm going to ink the whole thing. If you want to keep more definition of the sun rays, go ahead and ink your panel first and then apply or ink through your stencils, and you won't lose the crisp lines if that's what you're looking for. I didn't mind the kind of softening of this, so I went ahead and did it second. I'm going to spritz this with water from a distress sprayer now to leave some water droplets and add some nice distressing in the background. I let it sit for just a little bit, maybe 30-45 seconds, and then I'll blot it dry with a paper towel, and there's some awesome distressing. This is often how I start a background, by building it from the back up. A very strong supporting background scene is really helpful when you're creating a scene card. Now on a scrap of Bristol smooth cardstock, it was actually the other end from what I trimmed down my background from, I am going to stamp 2 borders using that Ocean Borders stamp from the new Ocean Borders stamp set. This has a huge background stamp in it, and then it has a couple of borders, and I'm using the Waves border, stamping that with Versamark ink and applying some white embossing powder. I'm going to go ahead and stamp 2 of these borders on this scrap of paper. I want to layer a couple of these borders along the bottom edge of my scene, along the background there. That way I can tuck the cute little mermaid sitting on the rock from the Ocean Bliss stamp set in between these two, so that it looks more like she's sitting out on a rock that's jutting up from the ocean, instead of maybe a sandy beach or something. There's so many different ways you can use these stamps and dies to build different scenes. But what I envisioned for my scene is that this rock is kind of just sitting out in the middle of the ocean, and she's hanging out on top of it with her little sea friends around it, and then there's going to be a cute little greeting and a message in a bottle floating by. Once I have heat set the white embossing powder, I'm going to apply Mermaid Lagoon Distress ink, and I'm only using Mermaid Lagoon. I kind of thought I might use Salty Ocean. Both of these names work great for creating water type of scenes, and the colors, of course. But I decided, since I'm doing a mermaid card, I would go with Mermaid Lagoon. And I'm concentrating the ink, keeping it darker near the bottom of the wave, and lightening it up or using a lighter hand to apply it towards the top of the wave. I'm going to go ahead and just do a really, I'm going to call it kind of a sloppy inking. I'm not worrying about, keeping it within the lines or anything like that, because this is an embossed resist. The embossed area is resisting the ink. Then I'm going to take that coordinating Ocean's border die that works with this border, and I'm simply going to cut both of these out, and it's going to give me two awesome ocean borders to go along the bottom of my background. Look, it's looking good already. Perfect. At this point, I really like to go ahead and grab my greetings, my images, and double check. This is a great time. I need to figure out exactly where I want that greeting to go. It's a little bit too long to sit beside her as it is, but I really don't like it up high. I feel like it needs to be down just a little bit lower. Visually, I want it to just sit slightly higher than the top of her head and then come down on that left side. In order to do that, I'm just going to manipulate my greeting stamp a little bit when I stamp that on the background. So I'm going to set this aside. Now I can see how it's going to work. This looks good. And I can stamp my images from Ocean Bliss and Mermaid Song that I want to use. So the mermaid is from Ocean Bliss. All of her supporting cast here is from Mermaid Song. I've got two starfish, I have the crab, and the message in a bottle. I am speeding through the coloring simply because it does take a little bit of time, and we don't want to sit here for 40 minutes watching me color. But I like to leave it in because I know a lot of you like to kind of watch that process. Her hair, I went on and did a Google search for mermaid hair, and it came up with lots of results with people dyeing their hair with this purple, blue, and aqua color combination. So that was my inspiration for her hair, and I very much followed that kind of game plan when I was coloring her, and just blending from the purples or the violets to the nice royal blues and finishing out with aqua ends. And I'm blending those colors into each other so it's a nicer transition. But I think it's really freeing and fun to be able to color these mermaids with kind of wild colored hair. The last mermaid card I did for our blog hop, I did a mermaid with all blue hair, and it was really, really fun. So I tried to find something a little bit different but still kind of interesting to do for her hair. Her mermaid tail is in shades of green. I think I mentioned, but if not, I'll mention again. The colors I'm using for each area of this are listed across the bottom of the screen, just for easy reference. The rocks, including this big rock she's sitting on, later on, and I'm not going to color it in the video, I did take the little rock image from Mermaid Song, and I stamped it and colored it the same. I like the idea of having this big rock and then these little rocks sitting in front of it, and it gives the crab a nice place to sit on in front of her, kind of out there in the waves. So you'll see that in the finished card. The crab is in some shades of red, and he was tricky to color. I need some of those fine nibs for my Copic markers because there's some really delicate little areas there. I actually took a white opaque pen and tried to clean up where I got out of the lines a little bit. Her shell she's holding I colored that with some yellow reds. the flower in her hair, and her bikini top, which you can't see much of the bikini top, so it's just a single color. We're in some kind of red-violet colors. This starfish is going to be mainly yellows with a little tiny touch of orange, and then some R20 for the cheeks because he's got a cute little face. The message in a bottle, I just want to give that glass bottle a tiny touch of color. My other starfish is going to be in some light kind of peachy red shades. And then finally that scroll in the message in a bottle is in some cool gray colors. And go over that bottle again too. Now I'm going to stamp my greeting, and this is how I'm going to do it. You could cut it apart. I know lots of crafters cut them apart. I always tend to have a lot of anxiety about that. I don't know why. I know they're going to be perfectly fine. But instead, what I found is I will mask them off. So I'm going to line up my stamps the way I think I'm going to use them. And I'm going to find, I think, that it's going to be better to stamp my greeting in sections. I need to mask off that word love because I do not want that going across the front of her head. So I've just used a little Post-it tape to mask that off, and I stamped part of the greeting that says sending a sea full of. Then I'm going to clean my stamp really good, line up the word love, line up the word and I'm going to stamp those underneath to build the rest of my greeting. I just love these stamp sets where you can build your own greeting. And finally, I will finish with the greeting starfish. So the whole sentiment reads, sending a sea full of love and starfish. I think that's just super fun. I went ahead and die cut all of these images with the coordinating Mermaid Song and Ocean Bliss dies. I'm so happy there are coordinating dies for all of these, so I did not have to try to fussy cut. That little crab would have been kind of a pill, I think, to fussy cut, so that makes me happy that there are dies. I'm going to layer these two borders along the bottom edge of the card. Tuck the mermaid on her rock in between these two borders. The little rocks that I was talking about earlier, colored just like the big one. These are from Mermaid Song. Going to tuck that right in front of the large one. Kind of build that up. I can stick the crab on top of that then. And like I said, this gives him a great place to stand. It kind of grounds him a little bit. And then the starfish are going to be kind of like stuck to the side of the rock on the other side. And the bottle is floating out here in the ocean. So kind of maybe like she's getting a message in a bottle while she's sitting on her rock. I just need to figure out where to place this other starfish. Get that tucked in there. Now you might see those cloud dies sitting or to the right of my card, and these are the partly cloudy Honeycuts dies. And there's some awesome, there's like a round shape for a sun, some little stitched lines so it can look like maybe the wind is blowing or something like that, and then these awesome clouds. I die cut these from VELLUM. I also die cut them from white cardstock. You can see there a little bit, but the VELLUM is really going to work here. There's so much going on at the bottom part of the card. There needs to be something at the top to help balance it out, but not to overwhelm the design. So I am going to adhere 3 of those VELLUM clouds because even though it adds something to the card and slightly mutes the background, it's not going to cover anything up like a white cloud would. I am adding a little embellishment to her hair now with a white opaque pin. I love to go in and add a little white detail, black detail. I added some black to the eyes on the starfish and the crab. I added some white little dots to the crab's cheeks. I'm adding little highlights to her hair that will mute a little bit more because I will go over those with a Stardust pin then that has a little bit of glitter in it to give her hair just a little bit of a glittery shine. I'm using a Xyron sticker maker to add adhesive to the back of those clouds because that way it's going to completely hide the adhesive. This is a great way to attach VELLUM to a project where you don't want the adhesive to show. So here are my little clouds, and you can see now what I was talking about, how they add something to the top of the card, but they don't cover up the awesome inking work that we did at the beginning of this project. I did stamp some little hearts from Mermaid Song and colored them with red markers, the same colors I used for the crab. This is going to create a nice little scattering of embellishment towards the top of the card. Add a little bit of interest, a little pop of color. I'm going to have a trio of these red hearts. Again, there's coordinating dies for these, which is fantastic. I couldn't really figure out where I wanted to put that little heart, so I messed around with him a little bit. And then I'm going to finish by adding a scattering of the Clear Bubbles Sequins and Bokeh Lights confetti mix. I'll trim anything that's hanging over the edge off and adhere this to a white top fold card base. I will take some glossy accents and add that to the eyes on the crab, on the starfish, and also the hearts to make them nice and glossy. And I will finish by putting a layer on that glass bottle floating in the ocean. Thanks for joining me today for this Create a Scene Mermaid card. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.